Crash first, David. Can we eliminate nefarious activity, missiles, rockets, and the like yet, do you think?
I wouldn't eliminate them, Richard, but at this phase of any accident investigation, as you know, we can't eliminate anything. But I'm leaning not that direction. In looking at the photographs, I think there's some other explanations that might be better suited.
Such as?
Well, for example, when I'm looking at these wings and the structures that some people are saying it looks like a missile attack had hit it, if you compare those with what we saw in MH17, which was a surface-to-air missile, a Buk, it does not look like that to me. There's not a specific pattern. It looks like these things came from different directions, which that indicates to me that these were perforations and problems after the aircraft had the impact with the ground and it rolled. That's not the way I'm looking at. What I'm looking at right now is the turbine section of the engine has a extrusion. In other words, there was something that came from the inside out. And following that particular spot, there's streaks, there's scars and scrapes and smoke, actually, that came from that in line with the line of flight, which indicates that that happened before the impact. So that's what I would be looking at first on the investigation.
The plane was at about 7,800 odd feet, just a couple of minutes into the flight. Some reports were that there was a fire, or that they could see a fire on board. And certainly the video, the disturbing video of the plane coming down to the ground, does show it to be on fire. But you know, pilots are trained to deal with engine fires and the like. I understand this is the most critical time of flight, but what's likely to have happened that meant the pilots were overwhelmed?
Well, at this point, Richard, what could have happened, if we're going to go along this line of some kind of mechanical failure, would be the fact that a uncontained engine failure. Now, we've talked about these before, and we've had people that have been hit by debris from the engines, but just as equally possible is that in this particular area of the engine, there are other critical pieces, such as fuel controls and that sort of thing. So if it ruptures, and if it's significant enough to cause a rupture of a fuel cell, then at that point you have something more than what you can deal with, because it's burning the fuselage and the structure of the airplane, which has to be dealt with immediately. And so that would explain a couple of things. It would explain why the pilot didn't make a distress call as well, because he's dealing with that.
The Iranians apparently say they will not hand over the black boxes, the flight data and the flight voice recorder, to Boeing or the Americans. Now, firstly, do you know whether the Iranians have the competency to read out these machines? And if they don't, where will they go? Russia?
They may be able to do it, Richard, but they certainly don't have the experience to be able to do it in the proper way. And that's what I worry about. They would probably go to Russia again. I think that's probably correct. But as you know, with the United Nations rules and the ICAO rules, those boxes are supposed to go then to the manufacturer or the country that built and manufactured the airplane as well, to be part of this investigation, which to my knowledge at this point, the U.S. nor Boeing has been invited to be part of the investigation.
Now, that, of course, is in the treaty, that the state of manufacture and design is to participate. But more bluntly, David, do you have confidence in the Iranians as the state of occurrence to do a report that will be fair and get to the bottom of what happened here?
Absolutely not, Richard. I do not have confidence that the Iranians are going to do that. All you have to do is turn on CNN and look at what's happening over there and what's happening between the U.S. and Iran, what all is happening, and between Iraq and Iran, to understand that there's too many risks with the custody of that data. That data is critical at this point, and it needs to be protected, and the chain of custody needs to be maintained.
And finally, the airspace. Very few airlines are flying over those countries at the moment, but the truth is, flying over both Iran and Iraq is extremely useful when going from Europe, or indeed from some North American routes down towards India. And it can be extremely difficult, long detours if you're going to pass them by.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. That can create extreme problems. And as long as you're flying at the prescribed altitude, above 30,000 feet, let's say, then there's very few missiles that can actually reach you other than a Buk like we saw with MH17. So I think that they're accepting those risks and going ahead and flying in those areas. I'm scheduled to be in Baku, Azerbaijan, in another month or so with IATA, and I'm actually trying to figure out how I'm going to get there if I can't go that route.
Oh, I'm sure we'll find a Jules Verne route for you. We'll take you around the world on the way. David Susi, thank you for joining us tonight on that story. Now, we'll have more Crowd Means Business after the break.